So now that it's December and we're pretty much at the end of the UFC's 2023 year, I've decided to start looking back on the year that we had, and I think it was pretty good, but I feel like maybe our years weren't as good as a few of these fighters on this list, because I'm going to start it off by talking about the fighters that had the best 2023s, and that can be in a lot of different ways. One way is a fighter become a champion against all odds. Another way is that a fighter went from unsigned to the UFC and then become ranked in the UFC. And other options are just fighters that had a big blow up moment, fighters that become stars, fighters that fought often and won regularly, fighters that entered the rankings. I've got 15 fighters to talk about. If you believe that I've missed someone, let me know in the comments below, and let me know as well, do you think I should have a fighter that had a bad year in the UFC in 2023? And if so, let me know who you think had a pretty bad 2023, because I can talk about that. I'm going to start off very low key. A lot of these fighters at the very beginning of the video are going to be, I guess, like throw-ins, just kind of a little bit of a bonus, but we do get to some fighters that had mega years. I'm going to start off with a very low-key fighter. It is Joshua Van. He did only go 2-0 in 2023, but at the age of 22, right now, he was 21 years old when he signed to the UFC on short notice. I thought that he had a pretty big year. You've got to consider the gamble that he did take by not going on the Contender Series and fighting Zhalga Shimekilov on short notice a couple of months before he was even meant to be on the Contender Series, and then went back and fought the original opponent he was meant to fight and won just last month in November. Went 2-0 on short notice to get signed to the UFC and then become a contender, or at least put himself on the map by fighting a UFC fighter in Kevin Borjas in his second fight. I thought he had a pretty big year. At the age that he is, at only 22, I think he could have a pretty big 2024, and I would like to see him fight a couple of times. Another fighter that I think had a pretty low-key yet big 2023 is Jonathan Martinez. I believe he also only did have 2 fights, but the fighters that he beat were a much higher level than the fighters that he had been beating previously, like Vince Morales and Cub Swanson, are a bit of a step down in competition from Said Nurmagomedov and Adrian Yanez. In the year of 2023, Jonathan Martinez was able to establish himself in the rankings, was able to put himself as one of the top fighters to watch out for in bantamweight, and I think that he's going to have some massive fights coming up next year in 2024. Jonathan Martinez has made the list, become a ranked fighter this year, and defeated some pretty top prospects to put himself in the position that he is right now. Natalia Silva, I would say Natalia Silva had a bigger 2022 than 2023, but in 2023, I thought that she showcased her skill set that she does have by beating much higher level competition than she did in 2022. In 2022, she really put herself on the map when she took on Jasmine Jasudavicius and absolutely showed up in that matchup there as the underdog, looked really good, and then proved her skills by taking on Teresa Blader. That was a short notice matchup, and she beat Teresa Blader by 3rd round finish. Very, very good win there. That was her 2022. In 2023, she takes on Victoria Leonardo, which you could argue wasn't a step up, but then she does. In August, she takes on Andrea Lee, a ranked opponent, and she looks really good in that matchup. She looks really fast, showcases a lot of skill on the feet, and she's bound to have a pretty big 2024 if she can get past Viviane Araujo in February of next year. Natalia Silva went 2-0 over some good competition, become ranked, and really just solidified herself as someone to watch in this women's flyweight division. Another fighter who I think, had a very, very low-key 2023, but the reason why he's made this list is because at the start of the year, his stock was quite low. And the reason why his stock was very low was because he came into the UFC in January and took on Nick Fiore. And let's be honest, he did not have a good performance against Nick Fiore. He did dominate the fight, but he gassed out and just didn't really show a lot of signs of someone to keep your eye out for. But then a few months later, he takes on a massive step up in competition from Fiore in Loic Radzhabov. Looks really good in that matchup, defends some takedowns, knocks him out in round 2 after Radzhabov slows down a bit, and then beats a short notice Roosevelt Roberts on the first round in submission. I believe that by the end of 2024, if Mateusz Rebecki can keep this momentum going, we're going to see him as a ranked fighter at 155. Very low-key 2023, I guess you could say, compared to a few fighters that are coming up. But I believe he deserves a spot in this kind of list here because his stock after he beat Nick Fiore was at an all-time low. and I was starting to question how good he was as a prospect. He's proven that in his next 2 fights. All of these fights happened in 2023. Went 3-0. I want to see him fight 3 times again in 2024. Let's go, Matheus Rebecki. I think that he should be able to make it pretty far. The next one is Erin Blanchfield. I was going to say somewhat of a low-key year, but it was only really because she didn't have too many fights. I think she only fought twice. But at the end of the day, she's definitely earned herself a title shot against Alexa Grasso or Valentina Shevchenko, because they're probably going to do that rematch. But in this year, she beat Jessica Andrade. She finished Jessica Andrade and showed off pretty decent striking. I know that was a short notice Andrade, but Andrade is always going to be dangerous. And then she goes out there and beats Taila Santos. Now, that win over Taila Santos was a bit close. Was a little bit disappointing. She showed a lot of holes in her game there, but at the end of the day, she did take a big step up in competition. This is the same Taila Santos that did give Shevchenko a lot of issues. She went out there, she beat Santos, close decision, and now Erin Blanchfield is sitting there as one of the top-ranked fighters in women's flyweight. Brendan Allen had a pretty big year in 2023. I think he had a massive 2023, actually, because he did fight quite a few times. He fought 3 times against Andre Muniz, who a lot of people were kind of scared to fight. Now, in hindsight, maybe that win hasn't aged too well, but at the time he beat Andre Muniz. Andre Muniz was a solid guy, you know, a very good prospect, a very good guy at 185. And then he takes on the very dangerous Bruno Silva, beats him by submission in round number 1, and then goes out there. I believe this is his first time headlining a fight night. He has a fight night created around him. He's the main event for the first time, and he goes out there and has a great performance, submitting Paul Craig. And even I said that if Brendan Allen's going to win, it's probably going to be by KO, because I can't see him submitting Paul Craig. He proved me wrong. He proved a lot of people wrong. Now, a lot of people were on Allen, but I think a lot of people weren't really on Allen to win by submission. And he goes out there and he does it. Great performance. Main event win. His first main event in the year. Went 3-0 over some pretty solid guys. 2 of those guys were ranked. Maybe Bruno Silva was ranked number 15 when he fought him. I'm not too sure. But either way, Brendan Allen definitely pushed himself up the rankings. He's making some massive call-outs. I'm sure something is going to click in 2024. And you're going to see Brendan Allen have at least one pretty high, noteworthy fight against a top-ranked guy. This is Stephen Erceg's year. It was 2023. Massive year for 2023, Stephen Erceg. And that is because he wasn't even signed to the UFC at the start of 2023. He started this year fighting a Japanese fighter in Soichiro Hirai at the Australian regional show Eternal MMA in February. And then he was meant to fight against Clayton Carpenter. I believe this was his UFC fight, wasn't it? Because they were meant to fight on the Contender Series in 2022. That doesn't work, but he ends up getting a short notice fight against David Dvorak, who was ranked at the time. Goes out there, massive performance against Dvorak, even more impressive that it was on the feet. Becomes a ranked fighter himself, and then he had a fight booked against a higher ranked fighter in match now, but ended up having to take on a short notice yet very dangerous Alessandro Costa, who did give him some issues at the start of that fight, but Erceg was able to persevere and go out there and get the decision. So he took on 2 guys that are very dangerous in Costa and a ranked fighter in Dvorak. He went from unranked, unsigned to the UFC to ranked in 2023. Steve Erceg is someone you've got to bring up when you talk about fighters that truly had a breakout year in 2023, and I think Stephen Erceg is definitely one of those. Another one, Dricus du Plessis. Dricus du Plessis had a very big year himself. He did only fight twice, but you've got to look at the guys that he did beat. He had that very, very odd fight against Derek Brunson, and to be honest with you, that wasn't really the best look for either guy, in my opinion. Both guys didn't look super great in that matchup against each other, but the fight that really put Dricus du Plessis on the map and made everyone respect him and made everyone realize Dricus du Plessis is a lot better than we all think was when he beat Robert Whittaker. He won round 1 against Robert Whittaker and then knocked him out in round 2. Unbelievable stuff, and more importantly, that win over Robert Whittaker has earned him a title shot against Sha Strickland in 2024, and if he can beat Sha Strickland, you'll probably see Dricus du Plessis on this list at the end of 2024. Massive year for Dricus du Plessis. Earns the title shot, gets the title shot. You could even throw in that he got a bit of buzz around his name with the Israel Adesanya drama situation. And on top of that, he got surgery on his nose. So I think Dricus du Plessis, big year. Big year for Dricus du Plessis. Let's see if he can really keep that momentum going, because he's on a massive win streak, man. The last time he lost was to Roberto Soldic, who got exposed at one championship. Anyway, let's move on. Alexa Grasso is also on this list now. She did only fight twice, and one of those fights was a draw. And even then, it was still somewhat controversial. I still think she needs to come on this list, because at the end of the day, Valentina Shevchenko for the last few years has looked absolutely unbeatable. And Alexa Grasso went out there at the start of the year and beat her. And then went to a draw, fought to a draw with her. A lot of people think that Grasso could have won. A lot of people think that Shevchenko could have won. Honestly, that doesn't matter in this context, because in this context, Grasso still had a massive year. Making Shevchenko look human twice is something that I don't think anyone has ever done aside from Amanda Nunes, upper weight class. So Alexa Grasso had a massive year, definitely added to her legacy, become the champion, technically defended the belt in a draw. We're probably going to see the trilogy some point next year, probably February, because I believe there's a card happening in Mexico there. Let's see. Let's see what happens with Alexa Grasso, but one thing is for sure, she did show off in a big 2023 and definitely made her name known. A fighter who went from completely unknown to very known in 2023 is Alvis Brena. Once again, started off pretty low-key. You know, he came in on short notice, took on Zabaru Takugov in Australia, and won a split decision that could have gone Takugov's way. But if you really do look at it closely, you can score it to Brena. But that's not the point. The point is that he beat Takugov, and then he went out there and had the performance of his life. A massive performance against Guram Kutatelidze as a massive underdog. Nobody thought that he was going to beat Guram, and even then Guram took him on short notice. So not only did he go from fighting and preparing for Jordan Leavitt, all of a sudden his short notice replacement is Guram Kutatelidze, and he manages to beat him in round 3. Now, yes, you could say maybe he was down on the scorecards going into that third round, but he was still taking Guram down, which is something that people haven't really been able to do before. Showed off good striking, showed off power, showed off cardio, showed off heart, and then goes out there against Kanan Krachowski, who, I will be honest in this matchup, Kanan Krachowski come in and he didn't look like he was in shape. It was a very short notice replacement, Kanan Krachowski, and he did win that fight in the first round. Big KO win, big win for Alvis Brena, big year for Alvis Brena, went 3-0. He is knocking on the doors of the rankings right now. In my opinion though, I want to see Alvis Brena drop to 145 in 2024, because he is small at 155. He is not a big lightweight. He either needs to put on a little bit of weight or go to 145, because he has fought at 145 before and he doesn't look big at this weight class at all. So let me know what you think of that. But either way, Brena went 3-0 in one of the toughest weight classes there is in the UFC. Beat 3 pretty tough guys as well, and he had a big year. Another fighter with a big year, Tom Aspinall. Huge year for Tom Aspinall. Not only did he come back from an injury, and won, and then won again. But more importantly, in that second win of the year, he defeated Sergey Pavlovich at UFC 295 to become the interim heavyweight champion. Not only that, he's got a bit of buzz surrounding his name, with a little bit of drama revolving him and John Jones, which is a little bit funny. But most importantly for me, he got injured in 2022 and then made a big comeback. Now, it was against Marcin Tybura, but Marcin Tybura is still a tough guy. Dominated Marcin Tybura, looked really, really good. And then on short notice, takes on the man that many people wouldn't fight on a full camp, Sergey Pavlovich, and he knocks him out, which is absolutely insane. Massive year for Tom Aspinall, not only because he made a big comeback, but because he made a big comeback and then become the champion, or the interim champion. But a lot of people view this as potentially the real belt. I mean, because John Jones is probably going to retire after he fights Stipe Miocic, so who knows what's going on with that situation, but that doesn't pertain to this video. This does, though. This 2-0 run that he went on, 2 first 90-second finishes by KO over tough guys, especially the Pavlovich win. massive for Tom. He's 30 years old at heavyweight. You don't see young heavyweights like this at the top. I'm very excited to see Tom Aspinall in the future. And another fighter who's got a pretty solid future is Alex Paya. Now, Alex Paya had a bit of a down and then up 2023, because if you do actually look at his year, he started off the year with a loss to Israel Adesanya, and it was a pretty brutal loss in the fact that he was actually looking quite good against Izzy, and then he had Izzy a little bit hurt and got a little bit over aggressive, and Adesanya swung on him with that massive shot, knocked him out cold. It was brutal. He was on the receiving end of a big celebration from Izzy. I'm a Paya fan. I don't want to recap it too much. And then he comes back, upper weight class, only about 3 months after getting knocked out, 3 or 4 months after getting KO'd brutally by Adesanya, upper weight class against Jan Blachowicz, a man that has beaten Israel Adesanya in the past, and a man that is a former champion at that weight class. He goes out there, wins the decision 2-1, and then fights for the vacant title against Yuri Prochazka and knocks him out in the second round, to becoming a double champion, beating the man that beat his biggest foe and becoming a double champion, which is something that his biggest foe in Israel Adesanya failed at. What an arc that Alex Paya is on. My goodness, this guy's whole life is just to one-up Israel Adesanya. It's absolutely ridiculous. But he did it anyway. Beat Jan Blachowicz, beat Yuri Prochazka, become the double champion. There's even talk of him becoming a triple champion. I mean, that would be ridiculous. But he's 36 years old, so it's impressive that he's been able to do this. Not only that, he also got inducted to the Glory Hall of Fame. Now, that doesn't really relate to the UFC too much, but he had a big year in that aspect as well. Got inducted into the Glory Kickboxing Hall of Fame. Very, very big year for Paya. Become the double champion. Lost his belt. Most importantly, he lost his belt and then come back to become the double champion. Very, very good resilience, very good perseverance, and very good bounce back abilities, I guess. The next fighter is actually the fighter that gave me the idea to make this list. But in my opinion, he only had the third biggest year out of all of the fighters in the UFC, and that is Diego Lopez, who had a gigantic year in the fact that he went from not even being signed to the UFC to showing up on short notice in June and then fighting twice after that against pretty good fighters as well. He goes in here out of nowhere. Nobody's picking him to beat Mosa Evloev. Everyone's expecting Evloev to win. Comes out here, has a good performance in round 1, rocks Evloev, puts him in an awkward position with a submission attempt. Comes out in the second round. Evloev wins the second round. Comes out in the third round. Makes it interesting with multiple submission attempts as well and big shots on the feet. What he showed was just genuinely out of absolutely nowhere that he could hang with potentially the top 15 at 145, but he had to prove it. So after that, only a few months later, he makes his very anticipated second UFC fight, and this could have gone wrong. If he lost to Gavin Tucker, all hype would have probably washed away, let's be honest. But he beats Gavin Tucker, and he beats him in 98 seconds in a very impressive way. Gavin Tucker goes for a takedown, he jumps on a triangle, turns it into the armbar. It was like a walk-away submission win, which is absolutely nuts. You don't really see that because Gavin Tucker kind of in transition, kind of like maybe verbally tapped or something, and then Diego Lopez just kind of let it go and stood up. It was kind of nuts. And then he goes out there and knocks out Pat Sabatini in 90 seconds. Unreal. I think he had to defend a couple takedowns to do it as well, which is even more impressive. But even better than all of these performances is the money that he has made. $50,000 fight of the night bonus here. $50,000 performance of the night bonus. $50,000 performance of the night bonus. He better be on a good contract, man. I hope that he was able to renegotiate a contract in between these two fights, and he's made a bit of money. He's made a bit of a bag for himself. And you could even say that he's had a big year as a coach as well, because if you guys don't know, he's Alexa Grasso's coach. So he coached Alexa Grasso to beating Valentina Shevchenko. Massive year for Diego Lopez, but I do have two fighters that had bigger years than him. And this one here is Benoit Saint Denis, who had a mega year this year. Really, I mean, he didn't come up out of nowhere, but the steps up in competition that he was able to make on such short amount of time is very impressive, because he went from beating Nicolas Stolze and Gabriel Miranda who aren't the best fighters in the world. I know Miranda now has got a good win at 145, but he comes into the UFC, loses in 2021, wins a couple times in 2022, but then in the middle of 2023, in July, he goes out there and beats Ismail Bonfim, who's a fighter I'm still very high on. A lot of people are very high on Bonfim. And then, 2 months later, goes out there and beats Thiago Moises, who was given tough fights to pretty much everybody in the division, including Islam Makhachev. And then, goes out there 2 months after that, and then beats Matt Frivola, really cementing himself in the rankings. I think that we're going to see Benoit Saint-Denis have a big 2024 as well. It almost looks like nobody can stop him right now. He's got good striking, he's got good wrestling, he's got good grappling. Benoit Saint-Denis had a big year, and the only reason why I actually put him over Diego Lopez is just the fact that his social media presence blew up so much more than Diego Lopez's did, even though I think maybe overall you could just argue from where Lopez started and where he finished was bigger. Benoit Saint-Denis had a massive year as well. Huge in social media, huge in the rankings, become ranked, cemented himself as ranked, and more importantly, did it within 6 months, which is crazy. Huge year for Benoit. I actually think we're going to see him have a potentially even bigger 2024, but he didn't have the biggest year of everyone on the list, because I believe that the fighter that had the biggest year in the UFC in 2023 is none other than the fan favorite, Sha Strickland. Yes, I believe that Sha Strickland had the best 2023 year, and it's definitely something that I think is actually worth talking about, because when you look at his year, the calendar year 2023, you'll understand what I mean and what he has achieved in this year, because it is quite impressive. He ends 2022 with a loss to Jared Cannonier in a split decision loss, which a lot of people think he could have won. A lot of people think that Cannonier could have won, but that's not really the point. The point is, he comes in here at the start of 2021 and takes on a short notice main event spot in Nassourdine Imavov just a couple weeks really after he fought Jared Cannonier, and he beats Nassourdine Imavov in a pretty good performance, made Imavov look like maybe he just wasn't quite ready for the top 5 of the division. And then he goes out there and takes on Abus Magomedov, who was making his second fight in the UFC. Worth noting that people were picking against Sha Strickland in the Nassourdine Imavov fight, and people were picking against Sha Strickland in the Abus Magomedov fight as well. Now, with Abus Magomedov, he was a complete unknown. For Strickland, this was a really big risk, because at the end of the day, he had only fought like twice in 3 years, and the one time that he fought was in the UFC, and he won by KO in 19 seconds. And we knew that Abus Magomedov was a good fighter, but I think that the UFC was trying to use Abus Magomedov, so trying to use Sha Strickland as a way to get Abus Magomedov in the title picture, so they could then give Israel Adesanya a fresh opponent, because at this point of the year, Israel Adesanya has already beaten pretty much everyone in the top 5 at middleweight, so they needed new faces. They tried to do it, I believe it was Ikram Aliskerov as well, and Abus Magomedov was one of those fighters as well. Tried to get him in there with Sha Strickland, and Sha Strickland turns him away, and then, on short notice, because Dricus du Plessis got injured in the Robert Whittaker fight, takes on Israel Adesanya in Australia at an event that I was actually at. I was actually physically at this event, and once again, against all odds, Sha Strickland beats Israel Adesanya, a fighter that has genuinely looked unbeatable at middleweight for so long, has turned away all of the ranked contenders, and now Sha Strickland is your middleweight champion of the UFC, which is just ridiculous. And not only that, he did it in 2023, because at the end of the day, he was on a 2-fight losing streak in 2022, had a pretty bad 2022, beats Imavov, beats Abus Magomedov, and then just kind of out of the fact that DDP couldn't fight Izzy, takes on Israel Adesanya and wins a decision against him, and now he's the champion. And my goodness, he's a funny champion to have, because the stuff that he posts on Twitter is kind of insane. But anyway, we'll leave that. Dude, Sha Strickland's your champion of 2023, and he's your champion of the middleweight division. Let me know what you think of this video. This was a long video, my goodness. The Artem Awards show is a long the Artem Award show is long. So I'm going to make this outro short. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you have any ideas for me to do an Artem Award show on? With all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one.